Cooper Talk.
Welcome to Cooper Talk. I'm your host, Steve Cooper, and remember, I'm only as hip as my guest. I got to tell you something, people. Back in the early '80s, I was a college kid at Stockton State in Pomona, New Jersey, and in the summers we would go to the Jersey Shore. And then a movie came out called Eddie and the Cruisers, and we all loved it. And we loved it because it took place in the Jersey Shore. In fact, one of the scenes took place at a bar called Tony Mart in Summers Point, New Jersey, which I actually snuck into when I was underage. But that album came out, and the movie came out, and the soundtrack was just amazing. And I loved it then, and I love it now. In fact, a few weeks ago, Joanne was in the room watching a Hallmark movie, and I was in the living room, and I grabbed my adult beverage of choice, and I put on the soundtrack, and I just loved it. And when I hear on the dark side, when I hear that opening piano, it's a riff, I guess you call it. Boy, ask the guy. Boy, ask him if it's a piano, if it's a riff, because you think of a guitar. But it still gets me, and it just puts me in a good mood. And my guest today is responsible. He's responsible for that soundtrack, and my guest is John Cafferty. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm good.
Thanks so much for inviting me. Appreciate it.
Well, I love it because I'm looking at you. You got the gold records, and it's so funny. You know, I think about that soundtrack, and I think about that time in my life, and it was just, I had no worries, but we would hear that, and it was such good music, and I am sure you know this, but you like every kid and every college guy in New Jersey loved you guys.
Well, good to know. Good to know. Hopefully a few of the girls like this too.
Oh, believe me, they loved it. So how did you get into music? You know, because you've been playing for a long time. We're going to talk about your greatest hits albums coming out. But were you a kid who excelled at music, or how did you get into this art?
Well, you know, I when I was a kid, I wasn't really a musician. You know, I didn't really take lessons or anything like that. I can remember when I was about, 8 or 9 years old, down at the beach, and I had a baseball bat over my shoulder with a glove on the handle, going down to the ball field, and I walked by my cousin's house, and he had one of them, suitcase record players from Sears that, and he was sitting out on his porch, and he was playing. He had a stack of 45s, and I was walking by, and he played, Dwayne Eddy Rebel Rouser, and the sound of the saxophone and the guitar just somehow just stopped me in my tracks. I didn't, the beat, the whole feel of it, and I didn't know why. I just reacted to it, and I just, I liked the sound of the guitar, and, so I started to get interested in playing the guitar, and then, of course, my cousin Stevie and I went down to see, the Beatles in Hard Day's Night, at the local theater, and there was just something about those guys that just made it look like so much fun. And, so we started a band. We were like 13 years old. And we were off to the races after that. 71, and so is he, and we're still in bands. And we can still rock the house.
Now, how did you guys start getting gigs? I mean, I know talk to a lot of people who say we started when we were 13. But when you're 13, you may play a dance, but you're not playing bars, But when did you guys start getting gigs? I mean, was there like school dances, or what was some of your first gigs like?
Yeah, I mean, school dances. I can remember playing, I think I was a sophomore in high school, and I went to a Catholic boys' school, and I remember I had a little band together, and, we just, knew the songs of the day, the songs that were on the radio, a lot of the British invasion stuff, but, some of the, and then Beach Boys stuff, and Mitch riding the Detroit Wheels and that kind of thing. But I remember I was on stage, and we did Louie Louie by the Kingsmen. And Brother Timothy came on stage and grabbed me by the ear and pulled me right off the stage. He made the band stop because, I guess, he heard that it had, like, bad lyrics to it. So one of my fondest memories about being in a band, you know, getting yanked off by brother Timothy, that son of a gun. But yeah.
Okay. So when do you start getting work at bars? Because I know you guys had a busy schedule, and you know it's so weird because I'm 58, and when I was in college, all the bars at the Jersey Shore had music. You know, in Wildwood, you had the Penalty Box and Art Stock's Playpen. There's all these places. But I know you guys played a lot of bars in the beginning. When did you start hitting the bars, and how did you get your following?
Um, God, you know, in high school, I mean, you know, I played in a blues band, so there wasn't a whole lot of work for, you know, 17-year-olds playing blues, but you know that's what we did. You know, we just you know, I liked all those English bands that were playing, you know, like the Stones and the Animals and the Yardbirds and all that stuff, and you know, I liked what they played, and I was wondering where that music came from, and you know, it came from here. It came from Chicago. A lot of it, you know, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, Bo Diddley, all that stuff, and so me and my buddies that were going to school, we started you know, learning those kinds of songs, and which was great because we learned how to improvise and all of that. But you know, when I started working, I was probably in college, you know, maybe freshman year. You know, Kenny Joe Silva was in a cover band called The Love and Kind. Kenny was our original drummer, and he said that the lead singer was leaving and asked me if I'd be interested in it. So I said, well, I'm going to be a lifeguard, you know, for the summer. And he said, well, and he told me how much money he was making on the weekend. And I said, you got to be kidding. You know, not that it was a lot of money, but compared to being a lifeguard, you know, it was. So I joined up with his band, and, you know, I stayed for a little bit, and I didn't really like all the music that we were playing. And I decided that if I was going to be on stage, I wanted to do something that, you know, really made my foot tap and made me, you know, I mean, if you got to believe in it, because if you don't believe in it, you have no right to ask anybody else to. So I wanted to play stuff that had meaning to me, and so we quit that band and we started what eventually became the Beaver Brown Band.
Now, how did you start writing songs? Because, you know, it's the old scenario back in the day. Everyone was, if you had to play covers. I mean, if you went to a shore bar, you had to play covers. And, you know, people would sneak in original. And, you know, I mean, you know how it is. But when did you start writing songs? And what was your plan to, like, get them into your set?
Well, you know, I mean, just like everyone else, I mean, you know, you play in the bars, the bar owners want you to play songs that people know. So they want you to play the top 40, which we didn't really do. But what we did was we played early rock and roll R&B songs, and songs that we love. Number one had to be the criteria. Songs that we could learn something from. Number two and third, you know, had to have a certain you know, you know, energy to them. So whether people knew the songs or not, maybe they would recognize the feel of the songs. You know, they just felt familiar to people. So we did a lot of that stuff. And, you know, and then when I started writing songs, I was writing songs that were colored by the influences of those songs, you know, early R&B, early rock and roll, you know, Motown, all that stuff, you know, just sort of just putting the different influences in there. And so the songs felt like they fit in with everything else that we were doing. And eventually we started getting known for that.
Now, you released, I believe, in 1980, your own single or songs. I mean, how did you start getting recognized in the business?
Well, we had a 45, you know, for those of you at home, it's like the small records with the big hole in the middle. Oh, yeah. I remember my son wanted a phonograph. He wanted a turntable for Christmas a few years ago. He was a lot younger, and so we got him one and put on a vinyl record, and he looked at it and he said, "I got a question." I said, "What?" He said, "Suppose you want to play like the third song on the record. Like, what do you do?" I said, "Well, you got to pick up the needle and put it over onto the third song."
Don't give him a 40. Don't give him a 45. He won't know how to put it on the turntable.
Yeah, it's like the technology is, it's come a long ways. He said, "What's that sound? Like all that, like crackling and stuff." I said, "That's what records sound like, especially the records of a musician. It's like, if you ever buy a vinyl, don't buy used records from a musician. Back in the day, we had to pick up the needle and put it down and pick it up, put it down, pick it up, to try to learn the words, and then to try to learn the chords and the guitar licks and stuff. So our records are all, they're all banged up."
So you have the 45. You put out the 45, and people are buying it. So you're getting a nice following now.
Well, we're trying to get a record deal. We're going about it in many different ways, and the record companies at the moment didn't really think what we were doing was commercial, so to speak. They didn't. Basically they didn't think we could sell records. And they didn't think our songs were radio friendly. So we went into the studio. I had a couple of songs. One was a song called Tender Years, and another one was called Wild Summer Nights. Wild Summer Nights being the A side. And we printed up a few thousand copies, and we sold them at gigs, and we sent them out to radio stations, and we started getting a lot of airplay, first in Rhode Island, then Boston, Connecticut, then, Philly, Washington, D.C., Cleveland, and then the big one was New York City. I mean, NEW started playing it, and, we got a lot of recognition from that. But that's how that came about.
So did you get a record deal from that, or what came from that?
Well, we did a live radio broadcast on NEW from the Bottom Line, which at the time is a pretty prestigious thing that usually that kind of opportunity didn't go to an unsigned band. Which ended up becoming our first record in hindsight, because it got taped and retaped and sent around the internet, from cassette to cassette back in the day. But now it's all over the internet. But that is essentially became our first record. But the simple answer is no, we didn't get a record deal.
How much did that piss you off? I mean, the Bottom Line is prestigious. We used to hear it on like MMR. They would play live from the Bottom Line. You hear these concerts. You go, and Warren Zevon with Ed Shock, all these things. How much did that piss you off? Because you're getting airplay. Okay, you're on the radio. Okay, now me growing up, not being in the music industry, when I hear someone on the radio, I think they have an album. You guys are doing that. I mean, was it frustrating? Were you getting pissed off? I mean, how did you guys keep it together? Because you should have had a damn record deal.
Well, shoulda, woulda, coulda, and by the way, Ed Shockey was the guy who played our record down there. He was a great guy. I liked him, He was really good to us, But we just, we were lifers. We knew that from the beginning. I mean, we weren't in it for the short term. We were musicians for life. I mean, it's what we did. I mean, we were craftsmen. It was our job. It's how we related to ourselves and how we related to each other and to other people. that's just what we did. So, we had been together, maybe about, maybe like 7 or 8 years at that point. We knew that we were good at it because, we played night after night, 6, 7 nights a week, 5, 6 sets a night. I mean, we were pretty good at it. And, we said, well, I mean, who's going to buy records if not these people in the front row that are like, dancing and smiling and, coming back night after night. So, we were frustrated on one level, but not deterred on another level. We just, we're going to keep going no matter what. We just, whether we got to make records or we didn't, we were just going to keep going. So that's what we did.
Now, how did Eddie and the Cruisers come about? Because, that shit, that blew up. I mean, that's, you guys blew up. But how did that, how does a movie get made with a band that didn't have a record? I mean, tell me the story about how this happened, because as I told you, I love that soundtrack and I love that movie. But how did you get involved with Eddie and the Cruisers?
Well, a couple of years after that, I think the Wild Summer Nights and Tender Years and all that stuff was I think it was around 79, 80. So, after that, we were still in pursuit of getting a record deal. I was making a name for ourselves and making new friends. So we were, we played 3 nights a week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, in local bars in Rhode Island, north, south, east, west. And, on weekends we would go out and play for, pizza and beer and parking money. We would play wherever, people would have us. And, we made our week's pay in Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then we went out on the weekends and just saw what we could do. So we played in Greenwich Village at the bitter end. We were playing there one night, and a guy was walking down the street, as legend has it. And the guy whose name was Kenny Vance. He was in a band called Jay and the Americans back in the 60s, legendary band from Brooklyn. And he was walking down the street, and he heard the sound of the band, the saxophone and the piano and the echo on the voice and the big beat. And, it sounded like a ruckus in there. And he said, that sounds pretty good. So he came in and checked us out. And never knew he was there, never met him. And a couple of years later, maybe about a year later, he got a script from a movie called Eddie and the Cruisers, and said to the director, Marty Davidson, I think I know the band who's got this music. I saw him playing in the Village, and they might be it. They even got the sax player, and so he approached us to see if we'd be interested, and that he called us up, and of course the first thing I said was no.
Why?
I didn't want to do that.
Why not?
Because I felt that our band was good enough, without strings attached. That our music was good, that our band was good, and I felt that eventually we would get signed and break through. But we had been at it for a while, and this looked like an opportunity that if we did a good job on it, maybe somebody would be interested in signing the band, to a record deal, which is eventually, in a roundabout way, that's what happened.
So what was the process? Did they come to you and say, okay, John, write these songs, here's a scene? I mean, how did you come up with, like, On the Dark Side? I want to know how you came up with that song, because I love that song. I mean, when you wrote that, did you sit there and did you think the piano right in the beginning, I can't do any musical effects. I do the worst piano ever. But I mean, how did you write that song? What was your process in writing that song? Did it start with piano, or did you start with the words? How did you write it?
They gave me a movie script, and there was a song called "On the Dark Side" that was in it, and the description of the song was it was poetic in nature lyrically. That it started out with a classical piano piece and then went into a classic rock guitar riff, and that's what we had to go by. So Kenny Vance, who very intuitive, he said, you had a song that had a piano thing, maybe something like that. We had this song called Down Along the Cove that had like this sort of piano intro. He said, maybe some variation of that. And so, sat down and came up with a little piano thing, and I was working on a song that had that sort of like, guitar riff in it, and I used that, and but it had to be called "On the Dark Side," so I had no idea what that was supposed to be, and I said, "Can it be something else?" And they said, "No, because we've already shot a couple of scenes, and because they brought us in very late in the process. I mean, they were already started." And, they're talking about "On the Dark Side" as being this big hit record. I said, "Oh, and it has to be a hit record as well." So, I just sat down and I described the scene that was in the movie, or it was in the script, where the girl singer in the band who was going out with the lead singer, she comes walking in to the bar, and Tom Berenger, who's the piano player, he's got the hots for her, and he looks at her coming in, so I just sort of described what he might be feeling, the frustration of it, from out of the shadows, she walks like a dream. She makes me feel crazy, makes me feel so mean. Nothing's going to save you from a love that's blind. When you slip to the dark side, you cross that line, and that was it. And that's all there was to it. And up until the point where we had to go in, and I made the demo, and it just, and then when I wanted to record the record, Southside Johnny was with us. And I said to John, I said, nothing, but I don't have a second verse. All I got is this one verse. And he said, "Well, sing it twice." I said, "Can I do that?" He goes, "Yeah, it's a movie, And so I sang it once over the slow part and once over the fast part. And, we never thought we were making a record. We thought we were making, music for a movie, which they would probably only use like a minute of, or, a clip from each song. But, it eventually became like the biggest song we ever had. Not the best song I ever wrote, but the most popular, that's for sure.
Now, how did you get Tender Years in the movie? Because that was on the flip side of your 45.
Tender Years might be the best song that I ever wrote. We had that beforehand.
But how'd you get that in the movie? Did you say, you got to put this in the movie, or how did that happen?
Yeah, they wanted that song in the movie, and they wanted Wild Summer Nights. They wanted both the songs that were from the single. But Tender Years it's had a lot of longevity, and it's been a big part of our show and our band for, decades. But that's a good one. And I remember, years ago, before any of this stuff happened, I remember getting a call from, Bruce Springsteen, and he said, "This is a good one. This is a real good one. This is a keeper." It had like the lyrics from, it sounded like one of those Brill Building songs from the 60s, like a Drifter song, like a Carole King, like Up on the Roof kind of song, Oop, sorry. But, yeah, and they wanted that song in the movie, which I was very reluctant to do that, but because I wanted those songs for my record, for my first record. And but that was the compromise that I had to make, was to put those songs in.
Yeah, I know you said it sounded like a Drifter song or something like that, but why do you feel that it's your best song? I mean, is there a certain reason that you sit there, because you said you feel like that's the best song you've written? Why do you feel that way?
Simple, melodic, universal theme. It's tunes on the sax. I mean, he blows magic into it every night. And, I think the simplicity of it, and just the sound of it. We made a single. I always liked the sound of the single better than I liked what went into the movie soundtrack. But I don't know. Why is Stand By Me a great song? I mean, I don't know. It just is. It's just simple, beautiful. Benny King singing those lyrics, and the production, Lieber and Stoller. I mean, it's all great, and it just is just a simple song that just retains its quality time after time.
So now the album becomes popular. You got to do videos, which everyone remembers. People, there used to be videos, and we would watch them all day on MTV. That's all we would do. But what was it like for you guys? All of a sudden, you've been busting your ass. You're good. You're tight because you've been playing together. But now, all of a sudden, you're getting this accolades. Were you loving it? I mean, how did your lives change?
Well, that record came and went. We got signed to a deal, started work on an album called Tough All Over, because I lost 10 years in Wild Summer Nights, which probably would have been cornerstones of our first record. I started to rethink what my first record was going to be, and I started writing different types of songs, a little shorter, a little more to the point, a little more with the hooks for the radio, and that became the Tough All Over album. But as we were making that record, they played the movie on cable television, which was sort of a novelty at that point, if you can believe that. I mean, people were just getting signed up, and there wasn't a whole lot of content out there, and they put the movie on during the summer. All the kids were home, they flipping around the channels. All of a sudden they see a 57 Chevy and a good looking guy with a guitar and singing these cool songs, and said, and they watched it like 25 times. And by doing so, it was like they were listening to an album, because they were not only hearing what became our hit record, which is Dark Side, but they were hearing all the rest of the songs that were in the film as well. And consequently started buying the album, the soundtrack record. And the record sold 1 million copies in a month. I mean, it was just like, so we were playing at clubs, and all of a sudden there were more people outside the club trying to get in than were actually in there. And, I mean, within a month, it's like, we're number one on MTV. I don't know what MTV is because I don't have cable yet myself. And, but we got to go on American Bandstand with Dick Clark.
What was that like? What is that like for someone who, we grew up watching TV, and I used to do stand-up comedy. So, when my friends would go on Letterman or Carson, it was a big thing. But, you grew up listening to music. What is it like to go on American Bandstand? Because everybody watched that show. I think everybody back then knew Dick Clark was. What is that like for an artist when you finally sit there and go, "Holy crap, I'm going to be on American Bandstand"? What was the experience?
Well, I mean, we the whole experience. We started selling records, and it sold 1 million records in a month, and we all looked at each other and went, "Well, I got a funny feeling that we're not any more talented this month than we were last month," and that record isn't really any better than it was last year. So it's this probably has nothing to do with us. So we said this is the roller coaster ride. Let's just get on and go for the ride and see what happens. So to be on a show like American Bandstand with Dick Clark. I mean, it was like it was so fun, and he really liked us. He liked our story. He liked the fact that we had been around, and that this was a very special moment for us, and that we had worked hard for it, and we were very appreciative of all these opportunities that were coming our way, and so he liked us, and so when we were on the show, he was so good to us, and he's very personable, and he might have been that way with everybody, but I know that he was like that with us, and we were just thrilled to be on it, and it's like they shot that show in real time. I mean, it was filmed, but it was filmed in real time, so when they come up to you in the dressing room and say, okay, 2 minutes, I mean, it's 2 minutes. And you go up and you're standing there and everybody's dancing out on the floor. And they go, okay, 30-second commercial break. And they start like rolling amplifiers and drums and everything, and the kids are scrambling to get from the dance floor to the peanut gallery up in the stands. And like, they go 5, 4, 3, and you stand behind a microphone. You see a red light go on. And all of a sudden, there's Dick across the room sitting in the crowd going, all right, and he introduces you, and they play the beginning of Dark Side, and you're lip syncing. You're not singing it live, so you're singing along with the record. And as soon as the record is over, you turn around, and there he is. He's right on your shoulder, and he's got the microphone, and in asking you questions, and I'm looking at him, and my eyes won't focus because he's so close to me for the television, right? And I'm saying to myself, this is Dick Clark, and he's like, he's too close to me. I can't see him. And, he starts asking us questions, and went around to the band, and he's, get everybody to say a little something, and, we just thought it was just so fun. I mean, it really was great. It was terrific.
Now, how did, as the album, Eddie and the Cruisers is taking off, and it's funny because we had a cable in the Philadelphia area called Prism, and that's where I saw it. It was one of these paid stations my parents got. It was before HBO, and they had that movie, and we would watch it. But so the movie takes off, the album takes off, but you had just started working on your first album, not the soundtrack. So did the success of the Eddie and the Cruisers soundtrack affect your recording that album you had started working on? Because did you have to go out and tour now, or what happened?
Well, first of all, the movie soundtrack, especially the fact that it became as successful as it did, I mean, it opened so many doors for us. We got to tour all over the world, really, before, that second record came out. Which was Tough All Over, which was our first record, but the one after the soundtrack. I think having to give up what I felt like were two cornerstone songs from our debut album, having to give up Tender Years and Wild Summer Nights, it made me rethink what I was going to put on that record, and it also the fact that I had some success on the radio made me rethink what I was writing, the types of songs that I was writing. And I remember hearing an interview with John Lennon, who they were asking about what it felt like to be such a commercial band, because for a while there in the 70s, it wasn't really that cool to have hits on AM radio, and everybody had these, big long songs, jam songs and stuff. And John Lennon just said, he goes, I'm very, very proud of what we did, with the Beatles. He said, the trick is to be able to say what you want to say without compromise, to be able to play what you want to play without compromise, but use your craft as a songwriter to be able to put it into a format that will get put on the radio so that people will hear the songs. He said, who wants to write songs that no one's ever going to hear? So I thought about that, and I looked at this pile of, 12-minute songs that I had, from all our years of playing in the bars. And I said, maybe I should try to figure out a way to, make these songs a little more concise, or at least the new ones, and and put them in a way so that I could say something, but have it be accepted by radio. So Tough All Over was a hit, top 20 hit. CITY was a hit off of that album. And another song that was a hit in many, many places, but not nationally, called Small Town Girl. So I was very successful in that, in that I did get to write what I wanted to write. I had something to say. And they were hit songs.
Now, they're hit songs, the album does good. Then your next album comes out. Do you feel pressure? Because back then it seems like, you had the soundtrack, and then you had this hit album, then you have another. As a writer, do you start to sit there and go, I got to produce? Because, Eddie and the Cruise's soundtrack was great. We had this hit record. I got to come up with another hit. I mean, is it something that consumes you? Do you sit there and go at night? Because, we all get those anxiety at night, like, oh, man, am I going to come up with something? I mean, how do you go from 2 hit records and then all of a sudden you have to write a 3rd hit record? Is it very intimidating to you?
No and yes. The fact that we had 2 successful albums back to back that were basically hit the airwaves like consecutively. I mean, we had all that material all recorded. So when Eddie and the Cruisers hit, we had already recorded Tough All Over. So we went and toured 2 albums back to back, which meant it was a lot of time on the road, not a lot of downtime. Fun, took us all over the world. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, it was Hard Day's Night. It was the dream. We were out doing it. And so writing new songs, it was a little bit harder because just because of the time element of being on the road. So, they came a little slower, but I got an idea to write like a song cycle, which meant that there's a loose thread that runs through all these songs on the next album, which was called Roadhouse. That the basic character in the first song on the record, which is called Bound for Glory, is really the same basic character in the ending song called The Road I'm Running. And it sort of loosely follows through these songs of the whole album. There were quite a few hook-laden songs that had radio potential. The record company, when they had the meetings to figure out what the singles were going to be, all picked different songs. So there's 2 ways to look at that. It's either there's 5 songs that could be singles, or there isn't one clear-cut hit song on the record. So that was the option that they chose, and didn't get a whole lot of airplay or promotion, that record. But that's
Is that hard? Is that hard as an artist, though? I mean, it's like, when you sit there and it's good and it's not getting the airplay, I think it would take you back to when you didn't get signed. You're like, what the hell's going on? Now you're getting all this airplay, and then you're not getting it. Does it get you frustrated, or you just say, okay, the next one, writer?
Well, there was no next one. It was like after Roadhouse, it was we were presented with the opportunity to do Eddie and the Cruisers 2, and I had just I had just come through a situation where, like, if I did the first one to get a record deal. I got a record deal. I had hits. I could prove that I could do it, and the band could do it. We were starting to make a name for ourselves, and now they wanted to put that, the cloaking device on us once again, like to put us, make us invisible again. And I didn't want to do it. And it was basically, either you do it or you don't have a record deal. So, reluctantly, I did it. But once I committed to it, I committed to writing the best possible songs that I could for that record. I wrote those songs for Eddie and the Cruisers too, with me and my band in mind. I didn't write them for a movie. I wrote them for me and my band. And, if they used them in the movie, that was great. It was a use for them. But I wrote those songs like we were making our own album. And consequently, there's a lot of really great songs on that record. And, looking back at the whole body of work, I'm very, very proud of it all. Some songs saw more of a spotlight than other songs, but it doesn't take away from the quality of the songs in any way, shape, or form. Doesn't take away from the work. It's proud of it all. And, we go out on stage at night and, with no strings from movies or record companies or whatever. And I count to 4 and we create magic out of thin air. And in the end, that is the prize. That is the prize. The prize isn't the gold record on the wall. The prize is your ability to be able to go out there on a nightly basis, to count to 4, create magic, to lift up people's hearts, to lift your own heart in the process, and to continue another day doing something that you chose to do. That is the prize.
Now, you came out with the Greatest Hits album, and I know there's some stuff from, like, you had a song on the Cobra soundtrack, which I know wasn't released on one of your albums. What made you decide to come out with a Greatest Hits album? And it's remastered, right? So what is that like? What is remastering your hits? What happened with that?
Well, I got a call from a guy named Jeremy Holiday. Now, Jeremy, he used to work for Sony for many, many years. Got a new job with a company called Iconic Classic, and is now the president of Iconic Classic. Because he worked with Sony, he was very familiar with our catalog and our songs and our story. And he called me up and he said, would you be interested in putting out a Greatest Hits record on Iconic Classic Records? He said, I think I can get the licensing from Sony, because he worked for Sony. He knew how to untangle the spaghetti that the remnants of my career with the record company. And I said, absolutely. I said, coincidentally, I've been writing new songs, and we've been playing them out, and I'm thinking about making a new record after all these years. And I think it would be a great reintroduction to our fans and friends, to come out with the greatest hits and say this, we're still here. This is the best of ourselves and the best of what you remember us by. And hopefully, right after that, we'll have a greatest hits record going into a new album. So, that's sort of the fantasy of it all. But so far, the first part's working, and we'll see what happens with the second part.
Now, what do you pick? How do you pick what's going to be on what? Like, did you have to sit down with the record company? Because there's probably songs you love, and the record company goes, "That wasn't a hit." Like, how do you formulate a greatest hits? Because you can't put them all in. That'd be a box set. Is there any ones that didn't make the cut that you wanted to? Like, did the record company say? Did Jeremy say, "Nah, we're going to put this on instead"? How did you formulate it? How did you decide what's going to go on there?
Well, first of all, what a beautiful problem to have. It's like I can't figure out, what songs to put on a greatest hits, because we have too many good songs. It's like that's I'll take that problem every single day of the week. we had input into it. Jeremy came up with a list of what he thought would be great. We came up with a list of what we thought was the best of ourselves. And you have to remember that Jeremy, he's a record company guy. He's also a music fan. And he knows us through the records that we made. We as a band know ourselves in a much different way. We see what these songs do in a live situation. A lot of them songs were written for a live situation. And the records that we made are only the tip of the iceberg of what it means to be in a band and how we relate to what we do. So if you only know us from the record, you only see a very small part of the whole scope of our career, which is, it's riding the gigs. It's like, playing till 3:00 in the morning. It's like, riding the bus. It's working the bars, working, the concert halls, the civic centers. I mean, all of the above. It's such a big and very, all-encompassing experience. So in the end, I left it to Jeremy because what we were, with our input, but I gave him the final cut because I thought that we are putting out a record. After all, we're not doing a live show. And it's the greatest songs or the most popular songs that people know of us through the records. So, and I think he did a great job of picking out, what was on the record. Were there songs that I wish were on it? Yeah, but I love what's on it. I thought he did a great job.
Now, how did you end up in 2 Stallone movies? Did you ever meet Stallone? Did he ever call you and go, hey, John, I want you to... I mean, how did that happen? Because you had songs and...
Call me this summer.
What's that?
You called me this summer.
Stallone did?
Me and Gary were driving to a gig. We were doing a gig for the vets up in Boston. And my phone rings. And I look at the phone and it says, Sylvester Stallone. I said, you got to be kidding me. This can't be real. Right? And I answer the phone. I go, hey, Johnny, how you doing? Right? And it's him. It's really him. So I said, hey. I said, Hearts on Fire. I started singing Hearts on Fire from Rocky IV. He's like, yeah. He goes, that was so great. He goes, one of the greatest workout scenes in the history of film. And he goes, your voice is right on top of it all. I said, man, I had the easy part. I just sang a song. By the end of the song, you had to climb up a mountain and fight a Russian. He goes, I did. So, his brother Frank was playing down in Atlantic City, and we were down in Atlantic City the same week. We played on the boardwalk, and he asked me if I'd be interested in opening up the show for Frank at the Hard Rock, at Atlantic City. I said, absolutely. He said, yeah, we're going to film the whole thing. It's going to be great. And so, we all went out to dinner, and, it was those guys are so fun. It was just the two of them and, and me and the band. And it was just, we spent like 3 hours just sitting around, trading stories.
Well, I read a review of your show in Atlantic City, and they said you still kick ass. And it's like, how important it is to you to give that good show? Because, especially after COVID, when I would go to a lot of concerts before COVID, and then I wouldn't go to them. And it's funny because I get along, me and my wife have only been married for 3 years, and we have a great marriage, but she doesn't like concerts. So I go out with my buddy who, he was my concert buddy, and then all of a sudden I didn't have that. And when concerts came back, it was great. But what was it like when you went back? I mean, did you sit there and say, these people, they've been missing out on live music? I mean, you always deliver, but how much was it more special now that people were shut in for a while and missing your music?
Well, we're an old school band, so, we, from day one, we count to 4, we do it for real, we go for it. every time, and truthfully, it's like, why not? What else are you doing it for? If you don't believe in yourself and believe in what you're doing, like, why would you ask somebody else to do that? So we go for it. We lay it on the line every time. And but in this time after the shutdown, when they lifted up the curtain, I told the band when we were sort of on the sidelines, for a year and a half or so, I said, eventually they're going to open up the curtains. And when they do, we can either be rusty or we can be better than we ever were. I know what I'm choosing. So we rehearsed and we wrote songs and we revived the songbook and got, pulled out songs from the 70s that were never recorded. I mean, so when we came out of COVID, I mean, our show went from, from an hour and a half to like 3 hours, of like, rock and roll insanity up there. So, but if you pace it right, it can be, just a really fun night. And, that's what we do. I mean, if you have the ability to be able to go out there and to, music is a giving thing. It's not a getting thing. I don't want anything from the crowd. I go out there and the band goes out there and it's we got something to give. I go out there and think that, well, I got something that's going to be so fun, and, let's just, it takes the whole room to do it. It takes everybody's participation. So let's just do it. Let's have a great night. Why not? So that's what we do, and when you go out there with that attitude, you get so much more in return, you really do. And it really turns into a whole experience. I mean, the whole room is like, singing and dancing and, it's old bar band experience, it's great.
Now, where do you have to place on the dark side? Where do you put that on your set? Because
right up front.
So you open with that, and then you got them. You got them right then, and then you just.
It's never more than 3 songs deep into the set ever. Like from day one, it's like, this is what you came for. Boom, here it is. And you make friends with the crowd right away. They're very excited, and and then you got the rest of the night to just, now you got a bunch of friends in the room. You got the rest of the night to to explore all kinds of stuff, tell all kinds of stories to one another. And, I mean, they tell a story to us just as much as we're telling it to them, just by the way they react to one another, the way they react to the music. You take your ego out. You let the music do what it's supposed to do. And just like when I was a little kid and I was walking by my cousin's house and he was playing Dwayne Eddy's Rebel Rouser, it stopped me in my tracks and it just made my foot tap. And I don't even know why to this day. It just does. I don't have to know why. It just does. It just is. I mean, I hear something and it just makes me feel better. And I know that I have the ability to do that with my band. I know that I have the ability to count to 4 and to create magic and to make people feel better, and in return, make ourselves feel better as well, to lift our hearts.
I have one final question. It's a 2-parter. The name Beaver Brown, I heard, if it's true, from a paint can, but how did it go from just Beaver Brown? How did Beaver Brown, if that's true about the paint can, and then how did it end up them deciding it was John Cafferty and Beaver Brown Band? How did this happen? Where's Beaver Brown from? How'd you find it?
Well, Beaver Brown was, when we started the band, we rehearsed for like a year, before we played anywhere. Got a job at the University of Rhode Island. They said, what do we put on the poster? And we looked at each other and went, I don't know. We could think of a name. So we went out and got a case of beer and we just, started drinking and thinking and looking around the room and, how about, the mic stands, the ashtrays, the doorknobs, I don't know. And somebody said Beaver Brown. I think it was Bobby. And we said, Beaver Brown, what? This is the 70s where, you could have goofy names like that, Jethro Tull, So we said, and it was a paint can on the floor that we used to paint the inside of the rehearsal room in. And so we said, yeah, we'll change it next week. Let's just use that for this week. And so we went out and we played, and, bada bing, bada boom. We were like the most popular band in the neighborhood, right away. So we just, we kept the name. We got to the record business portion of the career, and the record company, they're interested in where the songs come from, the voice, the writer. They want my name in front of the band. It was at a time when, just like in the 70s, it went from the Strawberry Alarm Clock and, Jethro Tull and all those crazy names to it was Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band, Bruce Springsteen, the E Street Band, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, Huey Lewis and the News, Southside Johnny and the Jukes. So it was a very common thing to, put the writer and lead voice out in front.
Well, there you go. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. People, go to the website. It's at johncafferty.com. Go buy the Greatest Hits album. You're going to like it. And go buy the Eddie and the Cruiser soundtrack. You're going to like it. If you haven't heard it and you're friends with me, I don't know why I'm friends with you if you've never even seen that movie. But so please, go follow, go to John Cafferty. When you see him in town, go see him. He puts on a hell of a show. Go to my website, coopertalk.net. You can find over 935 episodes. Email me, Cooper at coopertalk.net. Instagram, I'm at CooperTalk1. Twitter, I'm at Cooper Talk. Remember, I'm Steve Cooper. I'm only as hip as my guests. Don't forget, drink your water, eat your vegetables, take your vitamins, and I'll talk to you guys next time.